Thank you so much for coming to the January 25th No War on Iran demo. This is part of a global call for demonstrations, and many cities in the United States, as well as Asia, Africa, and Europe, and South America, everywhere in the world. There are many international cities participating, and I'm proud that we're able to participate here today. My name is Kat McNeil with the Virginia Defenders for Freedom, Justice, and Equality. I'm going to be your first speaker. I promise I'll be quick. And then we're going to have addresses from Food Not Bombs, the Richmond chapter of the Industrial Workers of the World, IWW, and then the Richmond chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. So please bear with us. Please make sure that people can pass on the sidewalk. We need a 5-foot clearance area between everybody. And let's get started. No war on Iran. On January 3rd of this year, the U.S. carried out a drone strike near the Iraqi city of Baghdad to assassinate Iranian General Qasem Soleimani and 9 others. Soleimani is widely described in American media as the second most powerful political figure in Iran. The government's justification for this act, why Soleimani specifically and why now, has changed several times, but it seems to be settling on the claim that Soleimani was planning to imminently launch attacks against American targets. Nobody's provided any kind of evidence for Trump's justification. It sounds kind of like an international "I feared for my life" defense, the kind of thing a cop says when they want to get away with murder. In fact, Soleimani was in Iraq to bring a proposal for lowering tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia, something the U.S. would not want to see. In the wake of the assassination, Trump took to Twitter to say that if Iran retaliated, the U.S. military would bomb Iran's ancient cultural sites. This is the kind of over-the-top, appalling stuff that sounds like a parody. It's an evil that would be cartoonish if it didn't come with a body count. But the more you learn about the U.S. government's attitude about Iran specifically, the less surprising it really seems. Do you guys remember when John McCain sang "Bomb, Bomb, Bomb Iran" to the tune of the Beach Boys' Barbara Ann in 2007? Trump is continuing a long tradition of aggression, one handed down to him not only by Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush, but also Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton. A hatred that stems essentially from the Iranian people's refusal to submit to outside domination, as is their right as a people, as is the right of all oppressed people. So what started this abhorrent tradition, and how did we end up here today? In 1953, the newly established CIA carried out its first coup, overthrowing the popular Iranian Prime Minister Dr. Mohammad Mossadegh at the behest of the British government. Dr. Mossadegh was taking steps to nationalize Iran's extensive oil resources, were at the time under the control of the Anglo-Persian Petroleum Company. The British government owned a controlling share of the APPC, which would go on to become BP, or British Petroleum, and so was opposed to Iranian control of this valuable resource. The coup installed an authoritarian monarch, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who would reign and keep the oil profits flowing for the various multinationals until the Islamic Revolution of 1979. At that point, the U.S. severed diplomatic ties, levied sanctions, and embarked down the path that leaves us here 41 years later, with a U.S. administration clearly eager for war. I imagine that to many of you this sounds startlingly familiar. Iran was the first test of America's favorite tactic of covert regime change, and it wasn't the last. The only thing most people in this country know about Iran is the hostage crisis of 1979. The Iranians have much better memories. They remember the CIA coup of 1953. They remember U.S. support for Iraq in the 8-year Iran-Iraq War, and the U.S. downing of the Iranian Airbus 655 in 1988 that killed nearly 300 civilian passengers and crew. They remember cyber warfare, they remember the crippling sanctions, and on and on and on. The U.S. has hardly known a single day of peace since its founding, while Iran has not attacked another country in more than 200 years. We need to resist the calls of those who put blame for the current crisis on both sides. One side side is at fault, and it's the U.S. government. That's why we'll say, no war on Iran!
No war on Iran!
Stop the endless wars!
Stop the endless wars!
Money for jobs, education, and people's needs, not for endless wars.
Money for education, people's needs, not for endless wars.
Sorry, I know that one was really long, but if you want it, we have to go big. All right, thank you guys so much. Our next speaker is Sanaz from Food Not Bombs. She was actually recently in Iran during the most recent escalation, and she's going to give us a report from the ground. All right, everybody, Sanaz.
Just make sure you see it. Yeah, right here. Hello? Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, awesome. So, thank you all for coming. My name is Sanaz. I'm an Iranian American. I recently went to Iran to visit my family. I was there for about 3.5 weeks, and I was staying in Mashhad. I had not been back to Iran in about 4 years, and while I was there, the United States attacked and killed our General Qasem Soleimani, and I got to witness the reaction of the Iranian public. And it was interesting to see not only the masses of people in the different provinces in Iran express their frustrations, but I saw the same in India, in Pakistan, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Palestine, in Iraq as well. And I think that this unified all of the people under one cause. The United States has again shown that it is not to be trusted. It does not have the best interest of Iran in mind. It never has. This attack was definitely an attempt by the Trump administration to increase Donald Trump's chances of re-election for the next term, and also to send a message to Saudi Arabia, to Israel, that it is either the United States and the petrodollar or war in Iran. I was also there for when the United States' 2 military bases in Iraq were struck. This was actually a joint action with Iran and Iraq. There were missiles sent obliterating those 2 military bases from both sides, because it was also that Iraq is protesting today. Over 1 million Iraqis took to the streets in Baghdad saying that they want the United States out of their country. They have been illegally occupying Iraq for about 15 years now, and I saw the news of the protesters taking over the embassy, the American embassy in Iraq, and I was very proud of them. I'm very proud of their protests today. Iran and Iraq used to be enemies under Saddam's rule, but now we are working together. Not only did we defeat ISIS together and Al-Qaeda together with no help from the United States, no help from Saudi Arabia, no help from any of these allies, and I remember watching the soldiers, Iranian and Iraqi soldiers, helping Christians in Iraq rebuild their churches. You know, this is why General Soleimani's assassination was so significant. It was because of his work that Christians in Syria could celebrate Christmas again the past 2 years and rebuild Aleppo. So I'm very proud of my people. I think that we retaliated in a very smart way. I don't believe any of these recent reportings that there were 11, 20, 30, whatever American soldiers that were killed. I think these are lies. I think it was smart of Iran to leave the nuclear deal. It was bound to happen no matter what. If it wasn't going to happen now, it would happen under the next president. And I also support Iranian people, with the Iraqi people, with resistance in the region, any opportunity that presents itself to you. I remember I was telling my family that I was going to be organizing these things and that they were really happy about this, because I remember my cousin, she told me, you know, see, when the United States struck Iraq with those airstrikes, those protesters took over the American embassy there. And then she asked me, the United States commits these war crimes in many countries. All of the people domestically, internationally that are killed. How come the people don't do anything? They don't take an embassy. They don't take they don't come together to actually show action. So I'm glad that I can tell them that there were these organizations, and thank you for coming. If you have any questions, if you want to ask me more detailed questions, you're welcome to ask me after this. I will be here, and I believe we have another speaker from the IWW. So if they can come up, and I'll pass the mic.
The Richmond IWW branch would just like to express solidarity as a workers' organizing movement. We want to express our solidarity with the people of Iran. War is always at the expense of the working class and the working people and the environment and the living beings within this world. So we reject all forms of war, especially war coming from the United States of America, the aggressor, as our speakers have so eloquently laid out before me. So with that, I would like to read some statements of solidarity from other places within the state. I'm going to probably squat down, this is a little too short for me. So, from Roanoke, the Plowshare Peace Center of Roanoke is in solidarity with the people in Blacksburg, Richmond, and Norfolk who are protesting today the possible war with Iran, or as we have said, on Iran. Some of our folks have carpooled to big demonstrations at the White House. Know that we in Roanoke and at the White House are with you. From Hampton Roads, Coalition for Peace and Planet. Greetings and gratitude to all who helped organize and those attending today's global day of protest. No War on Iran events in Norfolk, Richmond, Harrisonburg, Blacksburg, and around Virginia, the United States, and internationally. The Hampton Roads Coalition for Peace and Planet is an alliance of peace and environmental groups and citizens in the region that's mission is to support, educate, organize, and mobilize in nonviolent opposition to all illegal and unconstitutional wars, whether military, political, or economic. We recognize that the U.S. government's bipartisan aggressions abroad are fueled by its insatiable appetite for minerals and energy resources and drives both environmental destruction and global warming. Fossil fuels and war are inseparable, and our movements will be stronger together. Basing our unity on the principles of the United Fronts for Peace and Environmental Action allows us to struggle together to win specific reforms without requiring broad political agreement. But as a coalition, we do not ally ourselves with parties of war and fossil fuel. Please join us in calling for the closing of all military bases abroad and the elimination of nuclear weapons, using those expenditures to meet domestic needs such as education, healthcare, and a just transition to wind, water, and solar energy, and to extend reparations to those countries where the U.S. has caused human and material destruction. We will stand in support of the right of all oppressed people, whether domestic, colonial, or formerly such, to self-determination and to choose freely without the U.S. government interference their own political, social, and economic systems. In solidarity from the activists and groups here in Norfolk and from around Hampton Roads, the Tidewater Solidarity Collective, Disrupt the Elite Virginia, Tidewater Food Not Bombs, Mothers Out Front, the Coalition for Peace and Planet, Tidewater DSA, Norfolk Catholic Worker, Pax Christi Hampton Roads Green Party, Communist Party USA, and YDSA at ODU. And I've got one more statement. Solidarity and greetings to January 25th protests in Virginia. Greetings and solidarity to the anti-war protests taking place today in Blacksburg, Harrisonburg, Norfolk, and to the folks traveling from Roanoke recognize the aggressive foreign policy of our governments in the Middle East is a bipartisan affair, supported by both Democrats and Republicans. The endless wars we see there are not in any way meant to defend the people of the United States, but to control the vast oil resources of that region. We pledge ourselves to building an anti-war movement that opposes all U.S. aggression around anywhere in the world, that respects the right of other countries to choose their own systems and leaders, that connects the struggles here at home with those abroad, and is independent of both Democrats and Republicans. We wish you all the best in your actions today and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
A message of solidarity to those other gatherings around the state is our DSA speaker here. Austin, you here? Yes, all right, everybody. Austin from the Democratic Socialist of America, Richmond chapter.
Thank you all very much. Yes, my name is Austin Gonzalez. I'm a member of the National Political Committee of the Democratic Socialists of America, and very proud to be a member of our Richmond, Virginia local of the Democratic Socialists of America. Got a few remarks prepared here. I won't try to take too much of your time, but just wanted to say greetings to all of you comrades and friends. I'd like to thank everybody once again for being here today, as well as thanking the other members of the anti-war coalition here, our local Food Not Bombs, our local IWW, in addition to the Virginia Defenders for Freedom, Justice, and Equality. These groups all represent comrades and friends that have been there for our community, comrades that I couldn't be prouder about standing with here today. I'd also like to, in particular, mention some of the other folks across the state that have also been mentioned today. The Tidewater Democratic Socialists will be out today, as well as the ODU Young Democratic Socialists. And I think it's very important to mention something that I know the Virginia Defenders have played a major role in, especially in bringing this together here today. And that is never failing to raise the issue in bringing together a genuine anti-war coalition, something that seemingly has disappeared in the last decade, at a time when I know everybody here believes it is needed more than ever. Our generation cannot risk war. The next generation cannot risk war. The generation after that cannot risk war.
There is one.
As the saying goes, war is hell, and it must be opposed at all times, at all costs. We cannot allow our government to convince us that the working people of Iran are our enemy. This is about getting workers to kill workers while the rich continue robbing all of us. A war with Iran will only continue to open the floodgates to endless war in the Middle East, an unspeakable disaster that will destabilize the region for the rest of this century. You know why they killed General Qasem Soleimani? Opinions on Soleimani aside. It's not because he killed Americans. It's because he wouldn't bow to Americans. Because he wouldn't bend the knee to Americans. This is imperial aggression of the highest order. An act of cowardice designed to inflame tensions throughout the region. Even Crown Prince Bonesaw over in Saudi Arabia was said to have been disturbed by the events. That's how far the United States has gone in destabilizing world peace and promoting world war. We say no to any war, anywhere, at any time, for any reason. If it's Venezuela, what do we say? We say no. If it's Korea, what do we say? We say no. If it's Syria, what do we say? We say no. And if it is Iran, why are we here today? To say no. No to regime change wars that only serve capitalists and kill our working class brothers and sisters. If Donald Trump wants war, if Mike Pompeo wants war, if Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi want war, we will be here saying no more war. Before I stop here today, I just wanted to share a little bit of information about myself to remind us how important this is and how important it is for us to keep fighting on this issue. I was born in 1992. I am 27 years old. I'll be 28 a little bit later in this year, that is. I've been alive for nearly 3 decades, and yet, depending on one's definition of war, the United States has been at war for the majority of my life. For as long as I can remember, the United States has been dropping bombs on innocent people. Innocent brown people. Some innocent people that look like me. Never in my life have I truly known a time where there was any semblance of peace. which is why I say to my fellow millennials, any Zoomers in the crowd, and truly to all my comrades and friends of all ages, it is time for that to end. No more money for wars. Let's use that money on us. Let's build our highways. Let's give free college to every American pursuing higher education. Rather than criticizing other countries for their supposed barbarity, let's end our barbaric practice of forcing Americans to either go broke or die when they get cancer. We need to give guaranteed access to health care for every American. Let's invest in peace, not in war. Thank you.
Anyone who doesn't honk away from that.
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice. No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice. No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice. No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice. No peace.
U.S. out of the Middle East! No justice! No peace!
Slow down, guys. Slow down in front.
When the people of Iran are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
When the people of Iran are under attack,
What do we do?
stand up, fight back! When the people of Iran are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
When democracy is under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back! How do you spell imperialism? USA! How do you spell imperialism? USA!
Pickup truck, big one. Okay. Parking lot here, they're watching us. Okay, sure. No Trump! No one? All right. Okay.
No CIA, no fascist USA! No Trump! No CIA, no fascist USA! No Trump! No CIA, no fascist USA! No Trump! No CIA, no fascist USA!
No Trump! No CIA!
No peace! U.S. out of the Middle East! No justice! No peace! U.S. out of the Middle East! No justice! No peace! U.S. out of the Middle East! No justice! No peace!
Not one dime!
No more money for Pentagon crime! Not one dime! No more
Money for Pentagon crime!
Not one penny! Not one dime!
No blood for oil.
No Trump! No CIA! No fascist USA!
No Trump!
No CIA! No fascist USA! No Trump! No CIA!
No fascist USA! No Trump! No CIA! No fascist USA! No Trump! No CIA! No fascist USA!
No Trump! No CIA!
No fascist USA!
In the face of government violence, we will not
Be silent!
In the face of government
How do you spell imperialism?
USA!
How do you spell imperialism?
USA!
How do you spell imperialism?
USA!
No justice!
No peace! U.S. out of the Middle East, no justice, no peace! U.S. out of the Middle East, no justice, no peace!
What do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
Iran and Iraq are under attack. What do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
Iran and Iraq are under attack. What do we do?
Stand up. No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
No justice.
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice. No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice. No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
No justice.
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice. No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice. No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice. No peace.
Fight for jobs and education.
Not for war and occupation.
Fight for jobs and
Education. Not for war and occupation.
Fight for
Jobs and education. Not for war and occupation. Jobs and
money for jobs and education. Not for war and occupation.
Fuck Kissinger.
Okay. You want to? Not for war.
Occupation.
Jobs and education, not for war and occupation.
No war on Iran! Alright, our speak out will start momentarily.
I'm a BCU student School of Pharmacy. I'm originally from Bangladesh. You might not know it, but your clothes were probably made there. It's a low-lying area, so like climate change is a really big deal for us, so we really need to work on that. So after what happened in Iran, on social media, you saw like memes about World War III. And the thing is, for people in the Middle East, that's already happened. World War III started a long time ago. And there have been hundreds of thousands of casualties in Afghanistan, Iraq, and in Syria. So we need to start a real anti-war movement against both literal war and also economic war, because sanctions kill millions of people. Prior to the Iraq War, the sanctions on Iraq starved the country. Over 500,000 people died, mostly the elderly and children. And also, medication wasn't available. There was no chemo for people with cancer in Iraq. There were no antibiotics. In fact, because of that, there's like a strain of antibiotic-resistant bacteria in Iraq. You might have heard about it. It's called like Iraqibacter. That's the name for it, or something. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Contact, like, it's crazy to think how many people dead from sanctions in just Iraq. 500,000 people. That's 2 Richmonds.
Yes,
2
thank you
Richmonds
so much.
dead because of a thing you heard about CNN heard on CNN once or whatever. It's really big. It's lots of people's real lives. Every single one of those people is like a real person. It's just for perspective, the universe or whatever the heck. This shit's fucking terrible and it needs to stop. And protesting is a good way to meet people, but we need to be thinking about even more ways to actually like restrict the actions of the war machine from happening. Maybe like counter recruiting at outside recruitment offices, anything you can think of. Give people, have offline discussions, phones off about ways you might be able to stop the U.S. war machine in whatever little way possible. And fuck the British, fuck Henry Kissinger, check out Bad Empanada on YouTube. He's an Argentinian YouTuber who does videos about all the history behind all this shit, and it's really good. Bad Empanada, check him out. Thank you.
Just wanted to share a little anti-war rhyme that I wrote. Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, we bombed them all. Both Congress and the Oval Office won't stop it. Whoever you select to represent you, red or blue, if elected soon, forgets the new direction, proven an effective tool of deception, clever ruse, give credit due, success with few exceptions through sense of uselessness and youth and network news ineptitude. U.S. troops sent you, but soon death through inhuman, ruthless, cruel abuses do ensue. The terrorist forces of America storm in and declare the resources are theirs to extort. Arabs endure and resist the arrogant war. Retired generals hide their mental childishness behind their medals, lie dissemble while dissent grows, violence levels rise in tenfold. Try to get both tribal sects broke. Divided men won't fight, but when whole, you might as well fold. Oftentimes a threat posed calls for fighter jets, those conquered by U.S. no loss of right to suppress votes, copper wire electrodes, occupiers' MO. My banner isn't star-spangled, it's Marx, Engels, Lenin and Trotsky, Douglas, Luxembourg, Chomsky. Every pen stroke's a manifesto, a death blow on Capitol's threshold, with strangled breath spoke, demanding you let go. My banner isn't star-spangled, it's Marx, Engels, Lenin and Trotsky, Douglas, Luxembourg, Chomsky. Every pen stroke's a manifesto, a death blow on Capitol's threshold, with strangled breath spoke, demanding you let go. Radio silence, deprive the prying eyes of spies and tyrants, wiretap environment. Nothing with a microchip is private. Remember when today became NSA surveillance day? Our rights didn't fade away. They've been fatally raped since slavery days. Exchanges we make, but just say it's been saved. Complete invasion, read my name. Delete my complete file. CIA allows us to live free, not chained. These spy planes and unmanned drones fucking blow up a whole bunch of homes. Want gun control? Pull the plug on programs such as those. Yes, I have a problem with Democrat apologists who never have such politics unless it has Obama's wit. Ripping my gigabytes Hitler-like. It isn't right. From democracy to Stasi with a signature strike. Chelsea Manning freer. Leave Edward Snowden alone. What Assange exposed, gonna take more than outvoting, gotta overthrow him, not just politicians, but the billionaires behind. Iran, Contra, Chopper, Fodderman, fall in line. My banner isn't star-spangled, it's Marx, Engels, Lenin and Trotsky, Douglas, Luxembourg, Chomsky. Every pen stroke's a manifesto, a death blow on Capitol's threshold, with strangled breath spokes, demanding you let go. My banner isn't star-spangled, it's Marx, Engels, Lenin and Trotsky, Douglas, Luxembourg, Chomsky. Every pen stroke's a manifesto, a death blow on Capitol's threshold, with strangled breath spoke, demanding you let go.
Member of Richmond Democratic Socialists of America, and I've been anti-war for as long as I can remember, because my uncle was killed in Vietnam fighting an unjust war. He volunteered to go because he was a young man, and he was well, if you went and volunteered, you'd only go for 1 year instead of 2, so he volunteered for the Marine Corps, ended up dying for imperialism and the rich and fucking geopolitics and the CIA sponsored massacre. And I just want to say that we need to end all these wars. We need to end the Iraq war. We need to end the Afghanistan war. We need to end all these wars. And these things, like, people die. Like, my uncle wasn't the only person who died in Vietnam. Another friend of a family went to Vietnam and was personally, suffered post-traumatic stress disorder. A good friend of my family, and about several people from my dad's small town in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. In our population, about like a few hundred people, like several people, like 3 young men from Eau Claire, Wisconsin died. And they send the, people from rural backgrounds, they send poor people, minorities to die in these awful wars. It really just is awful. All the people who die, all the American soldiers who die in these awful wars. And then also, once they get killed, and it's not the end, even if they survive, they're not safe. They're crippled for life. When our servicemen come back home, they're seriously injured. And also, the ones that aren't, injured, they come back and they're militarized and they join the police, and the world comes back in terms from militarized police. Yes, it comes back. Right, there was a blowback. Like all the army surplus from Iraq and Afghanistan, it comes back. in Oakland, right? They use surplus military equipment to evict people in Oakland, out of America, Louisiana, Richmond, no doubt. Richmond, a very heavily policed, very militarized society. We need to overcome not just the woes in America, the foreign woes, as they say, but the woes on American soil. Thank you.
Thank you.
I come from the land of tree sitters. I consider myself a water protector. These are water flags, some of which are strung in the trees where people have occupied a white pine and a chestnut oak for over 500 days in Elliston, Virginia, to block a 42-inch frac gas pipeline from continued what I call petro-colonization. But when I was a teenager, I lived through the Reagan years. So my very early activism had to do with the anti-war effort back in the 1980s. And I've been thinking a lot about that ever since this happened. And I felt called today to say, hey, thank you all for being here. This is a beautifully diverse group of people. And ultimately, we're all fighting for peace, right? We're resisting the war. We're resisting all war so that we can learn how to get along. That's the most important thing that we can do. And back in the 80s, we used to take buses to anti-war rallies, anti-nuclear rallies, and we wrote a song based on a song that y'all probably know. And given that I'm all of a sudden thrust back into this fear of nuclear war, fear of the finger on the button, certainly fear of the guns, fear of weaponry of any kind, but annihilation. As a teenager, it didn't make sense to me that we had enough nuclear power in the United States alone to blow up the entire planet 40 times over. Like, why do you need to blow it up more than once, right? Isn't that enough? And now, I mean, it's inconceivable, the power of destruction that we have. And we can't do that anymore if we don't stop coming up with new and better ways of killing each other and instead come up with a way to survive. Then we won't. We are facing our extinction. We have entire continents on fire right now. Australia is on fire at the moment. My friends are living in trees to keep frac gas pipelines from being built. So, if you want to sing along, this was the version we made as we traveled to the Savannah River Nuclear Plant for a peace rally back in '84, I believe. We don't need no radiation. We don't need no nuclear war. Knock the arms race for a peaceful place. Reagan, wait a second. Hey, Trump, leave us kids alone. Hey, Trump, leave us kids alone. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. We need to be tearing those walls down. We need to be building bridges. We need to all be joining together and saying no to this and saying yes to what it's going to take for us to survive. One of those things is clean water. So, thank you all for being here.